This is Duke University.
On behalf of the Duke Islamic Studies Center, ISLAMiCommentary, and the Center for Muslim Life, we'd just like to welcome you first to Duke and to coming to this interview today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
You're the special representative to Muslim communities. Why is this kind of engagement so important to the U.S. government?
So this is the first time in American history that we have a special representative to Muslim communities, and this is a position that was established shortly after President Obama gave his historic speech in Cairo in June of '09. He talked about building relationships with Muslims around the world based on mutual interest and mutual respect. And he asked every part of our government to engage in this. And so at the Department of State at the time, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton stood up the Office of the Special Representative to engage with Muslims at a grassroots level, to focus on young people under the age of 30, and to make sure that we were looking at Muslims globally, Muslims in Muslim majority countries and Muslims that live as minorities. So this office, over the course of the last 4 years, we have been able to work with our embassies around the world to engage in new ways, to build new relationships, to open up dialogue. And it's critically important in the context of a post-9/11 world where we have to do as much as we can to engage with 1/4 of humanity. We cannot solve world problems alone. We must be able to engage with each other and solve them together.
What is the reason you give to Muslim youth who you meet abroad for U.S. interest in their development and success? What do you tell them?
Well, so let's look at the numbers. I just said 1/4 of our planet is Muslim, and 62% of 1.6 billion people are under the age of 30. These are digital natives that have grown up in a post-9/11 world where every single day they've seen the word Islam or Muslim on the front page of a paper, online and offline. They think about themselves in the context of that. And it is important for us not to look at them in with a particular perspective, but rather to listen to the ideas that they're generating about how to build resilient communities, how to build a more robust planet, how to solve problems in new ways. So we are engaging with them because their ideas matter and because it is important for us to find opportunities to get new solutions to old problems, to find new solutions to problems that we haven't been able to solve, and to think about things in a new way. As we think about our planet and we think about the way these young people connect to each other, because all of them are digital natives. They're learning from each other, and their platforms that we can help build will help us to think about the world in a new way.
Is this, in terms of finances, is this the kind of help the U.S. government is giving them, like they couldn't do it on their own, or what is the...
So, you know, there are so many things that we are doing to engage with communities in general, whether they are Muslim or not Muslim. Our embassies have educational programs and different kinds of entrepreneurial initiatives. We are working on healthcare and human rights. We do this around the world. This interest in making sure that we are looking at the demographic that is Muslim is not to say that there is not been anything that has been done, but rather to take some of the foundation of the things that we've done in the past and to build it forward, because the numbers matter, and because in fact what we want to do is to generate new opportunities to solve problems. And in order to do that, whether it's an issue of poverty, or it's clean water, or it's human rights, or it's girls' education, we want to get all ideas on the table. So when I talk to young people around the world about why we're engaging, because we care about their ideas and we want to do more to prevent this idea of an us and a them, which is a narrative that has come forward in a post-9/11 context.
Right, because there's no special representative to Hindu communities or Buddhist communities. I mean, there must be some sort of a thought that this is something to counter extremism, to counter that narrative.
So it's important to understand the ecosystem in which we're living right now. And the State Department has, as I said, many programs around the world that engage on a people-to-people level, a civil society level. And we engage with faith communities of all kinds, and we have been for decades. We have international visitor programs, and we have educational programs, and we have ways in which we look to faith communities of all kinds, people who are living as minorities and people who are living in the majority. But what we're finding right now is that we need to do more than we've ever done before to push back against an ideology of an us and them, to to find an opportunity to hear from a segment of the population on the planet that doesn't always have an opportunity to talk with us. And so for this moment in time, we really need to be looking at these young people who happen to be Muslim around the world to get their ideas, to move forward, to build a partnership and dialogue.
So FBI Director Robert Mueller recently said the Arab Spring uprisings have created a new segment of violent extremists that will threaten the U.S. abroad for years to come. Isn't it so important now more than ever to positively engage with Muslim youth? I
agree that we have to engage with Muslim youth, and I think we have to engage with all youth. Let me just put it that way first, because there's something very unique that's happened to this generation that's under the age of 30. Not only are they connected in new ways, but their ideas are out of the box. I mean, you're finding a 15-year-old, a 21-year-old thinking about the fact that they can actually make a difference. They're not waiting until they're much older. They're not thinking about themselves in the way that my generation or generations before me thought, I need to be of a certain age to be heard. There's a youthquake happening around the world, and young people's ideas matter, and we have to make sure that we're listening to what these ideas are.
What's the danger if you don't listen, if the United States didn't get involved? I mean, are you afraid of that the U.S. is somehow fighting a hearts and minds battle with sort of extremists that would want to take them under their wing?
So let me pull back and talk a little bit about the ideology of the extremists that is pervasive in every part of our planet. As we all know, in the post-9/11 context, this idea of an us and a them, that Al-Qaeda and its affiliates have moved forward. And that manifests in a lot of different ways. And it's also impacted the way young people who happen to be Muslim think about their identity. If there's one commonality that I have seen around the world as special representative that I've gone to more than 80 countries around the world in the last 4 years. While there is great diversity of Muslims around the world, the one data point that is singularly important for us to focus on is this issue of who am I? That the young people around the world are asking this question, what does it mean to be modern and Muslim? What's the difference between culture and religion? And why the extremist narrative matters is because when they're asking these questions, the loudest voices that come to the table are often those of the extremists that want to answer those questions. So it's important for us, for these young people, to find a different narrative, and also to form counter narratives to the narrative of extremism, so that we are not bringing forward a new generation that believes that they are not part of the world, but that are a generation that is engaged in it.
There are several non-governmental groups in the United States, including the grant that we are functioning under for ISLAMiCommentary, that are trying to fight this extremist narrative. How much of that message gets abroad to in terms of the American Muslim experience and what happens in our United States?
So it comes forward in a lot of different ways. The values that we live by here in the United States, our Constitution, and the rights that we have as Americans of any stripe and any color. There's a lot of confusion in outside of the United States when we talk to many people who conflate all kinds of West means the same thing to them. So something that might be happening in Belgium, they believe is the same protocol as the United States. They don't distinguish between many countries in Europe and what's happening in the United States, or conversations that are happening in Australia and Canada versus the United States. So the importance of us to be able to tell our story as Americans, that in America you are free to practice your religion, that you are free to be able to wear whatever you would like to wear as you live your life in America, whether it's a yarmulke or a turban or a headscarf or a cross, that you're able to see mosques and churches and synagogues and temples side by side in the United States, that that's who we are as Americans, is a really important narrative around the world. Now, when you ask the question, is that known and is that heard? In some pockets, it is. But I would absolutely say that we have to do far more to talk about who we are as Americans and to live by the example that we see day in and day out and spread that forward. The second piece that is really important in terms of who we are as Americans is how American Muslims differ as minorities from many Muslims that live as minorities around the world, and to talk about how their education process is very different, and how they learn and what they're doing, and how they're living side by side with those that are different and of different religions. And that's who we are as Americans. American Muslims are among the most affluent of faith groups. They're among the most educated of faith groups in our country, and that's something that isn't told a lot either.
Now, many observers have noted an uptick in Islamophobia in the United States over the past few years. that hasn't been seen really since immediately post 9/11, and various people scratch their heads and give their theories. Can you make sense of that? What happened to make this so in your estimation, and how has that been perceived abroad? And I'm referring to certain things that Imam Abdullah mentioned earlier in our state of North Carolina with the anti-Sharia laws and anti-Sharia laws throughout the country, and the voice of the Islamophobes, frankly, in this country.
So unfortunately, globally in 2013, we have seen a rise of hate speech around the world. It is something that is very serious, and it's something we all, as humans, should be focusing on. Parents talk about the increase of bullying that's happening in schools here in America. We can also talk about the fact that in Europe, for example, you see at the same time that the survivors of the Holocaust are dying, that there's an increase in Holocaust deniers. Whatever your data points are around the world, for some reason we're finding our planet to be full of this sort of push and pull hatred and bigotry and discrimination that's happening in a wide range of ways.
And why is that happening?
So it's also happening, as you pointed out, with communities that are Muslim, and you're seeing that take place. You can talk about the fact that there is more education that needs to be done in our country and around the world about what Islam is versus those people who are extremists that use the religion of Islam for their nefarious means, that they define it in that way, and that they don't that the vast majority of Muslims around the world do not buy into this extremist ideology. So as we talk about things, as we unpack them globally in conversations, both in the policy sector as well as in civil society, we don't spend enough time actually going through what is taking place. And I think there are a lot more needs to be done in terms of understanding across the globe. I will say too that it is not just about learning about Islam, it's also learning about other faiths. So there are many parts of the world that I go to that are communities of Muslims that have not spent enough time learning about Christianity, learning about Judaism, learning about other religions on the planet. It is not a one-way street. We all have to do more to learn about each other and to be compassionate humans as we talk about each other. President Obama talked about mutual respect. And that idea, that principle, that component of how we think about each other and how we engage is critical to the future of how we talk about all of these issues that you've put on the table.
I mean, many NGOs and people at NGOs involved with these issues say that it must be about more than education, because there's plenty of education out there, and there's plenty of encouragement for respect, and there's plenty of interfaith work being done, but still there's this problem that we have. And what is it going to take? Is it going to take time? Some people argue that it's just going to take time, like that, as though U.S. Muslims need to go through a hazing period, for instance, like several groups before them. Or is it going to take someone in a position of power that happens to be Muslim in America to change things? What do you think?
So Islam came to America at the time of the slaves. Islam has been part of our country since the beginning of our country. And Muslims in America are the most diverse group of Muslims in any part of our planet. They come from all over. They're free to be part of our country in ways that in many, many parts of the world, minorities have not been able to live. So there's a very special story here in America to try to figure out what's happened right now on the planet. And it's not just America, it's all over the world, that we are seeing a push and a pull around issues of being Muslim, around issues of learning about Islam. There's no silver bullet that's going to make the world a better place, but it is individual actions that are happening on the ground, not just from the policy level, but from the grassroots that come up, that we must work together. And this is the most important part. It isn't just about Muslims doing this for Muslims or Christians doing something for Christians. It's about the coalitions that we're building around the world to talk about these issues. One part is, of course, education, but it's also how you live your life, how you think about things differently, and what's taking place. At no other time in modern history have we had a all-day, everyday drumbeat of a ideology that is manifested all over the world, which is making people react in a wide range of ways. So to unpack these issues is not easy, but I absolutely believe that the human spirit will prevail, that we have learned a lot since 9/11, that even here in America, as we talk about these issues, we've become far more sophisticated and understanding about how we must be and what we must stand for and how we must act.
Now, you mentioned earlier Obama's 2009 Cairo speech. There was a lot of hope among the youth around that, mainly in the Middle East, but probably even further afield in Muslim communities abroad. When you talk to youth, do you see them supporting Obama and the U.S. government as much now as they did then?
So these ideas around engagement, about what it means to have an American government that is listening to and dialoguing with youth around the world is really important. And so the tenor and the shape of these conversations change day to day, week to week, depending on what's happening in the ecosystem around us.
What about now?
I've been very privileged.
Volatility?
I have been very privileged to have a chance to talk to this generation. And I think while there has been a great deal consistently, when I started this job and even today, 4 years later, a great deal of attention as to what is happening on a foreign policy level with many countries around the world. What young people want to do is to make sure that we are focused on, A, giving dignity to their voices, or their perspective. They're very concerned about foreign affairs, of course, of all sorts and sizes. I mean, the issue of cultural practices versus religious practices, the culture of human trafficking versus the environment, the issues of a two-state solution in the Middle East, whatever the issue might be, young people are engaged and they're active and they want to be part of the conversation and not wait to take part.
You mentioned also earlier today about generation change and U.S. Muslims working with Muslim youth abroad. You think eventually that this sort of grassroots connections are going to prevail?
I absolutely think that if we try to build a more robust world without the grassroots, we will fail. It is about civil society. It's about what's taking place on a granular level, community to community. The locality of things matter. Even within a country, the texture and the tenor and the tone of things are completely different. I often talk about the fact that when you talk about a country, you can't just say this is what's happening in Spain to Muslims. You must think even farther than that. Which demographic are we talking about? What city are we talking about? What rules are in place? What's the experience? So you have to listen to what's happening at the community level. And what I mentioned earlier about coalition building is really important. There are many like-minded voices around the world. And the vast majority of young Muslims that I have talked to, the vast, vast majority, wants to eradicate the extremist ideology and push it away. They don't believe there is an us and them. President Obama has said there is no us and them. There's just an us. And if we know how to push back against that ideology, it comes from the organic pieces at the community level that say, not in my backyard. This extremist ideology doesn't belong here. So they do matter. The voices at the community level absolutely matter. And the diversity of voices at the community level matter because they're organic and they're credible.
See, we hear a lot about the youth and their concern for what's happening in Guantanamo, what's happening with drones, what's happening with various U.S. interventions, military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq. When you talk to people, are these the kinds of things that they bring up, or are they more concerned with the day-to-day, how am I going to find a job, my health, my family, my house?
It's not one or the other. There hasn't been a place I've been in the world that a young person hasn't been concerned about the state of our world. They talk about current affairs. They talk about American foreign policy. They ask a lot of questions, and they should. They have to, in order to be engaged and committed adults as they get older, they have to know what's going on, and they need to ask perspectives from an American government official. But the question about whether or not, even though they may have an issue with a particular U.S. policy, does not mean that they don't want to engage with America. They have, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. They are able to do both, obviously, and they are really interested in making sure that while they've made their statement about what they think about a particular policy, they want to engage on a network that we're building or a particular cause that we're pushing forward with them because they care about poverty in their particular community, or they're really interested in literacy, or they want to do more on job creation, or they want to take part in a new effort around social entrepreneurship. So you see a lot of active, engaged analytical minds who may not always agree with U.S. foreign policy, but are interested in building, as I said, a better world, and know that partnership is part of that.
So have you been at all frustrated in this position since you came to it? Have there been seemingly insurmountable challenges that you've been able to face and overcome? Has it been easy? What's been your experience?
So I have had the best job in government. The opportunity to talk to young people around the world is a true gift, and I feel very honored and privileged to serve my country in this way. I have had some extraordinary conversations, and I have been exposed to some extraordinary individuals in terms of what they're doing on the ground. The individual stories range from someone that grew up in the slums of Kampala, that at 15 left the slums and went into the streets to get an education, and decided at 15 to come back to the slums and build out an education program for his community in the slums. People like that exist all over the world, who are these young people that have surmounted incredible odds to do great things. Also people who have, on the opposite side of the spectrum, who are very well off, who have had good experiences in life, but have decided that they want to do more to, let's say, push back against extremist ideology, or to build a new awareness on a particular topic, female genital mutilation, or domestic violence, or the rights of women and girls in a particular part of the world. You see these young people all over the world, and so for me, that opportunity has been wonderful because I've been able to raise their voices, I've been able to connect them to each other, and I've been able to create platforms with the help of my colleagues, of course, all over the world and in the United States, to build these wonderful networks of youth.
So you haven't run into any big
So
obstacles?
while all these great things can go on and are going on, there is an ecosystem where every single day things are happening in the world on the front pages of papers that affect the way people perceive things and what they can do. So as anybody would, there are moments when things are even harder than they could be because of a particular event. But I am absolutely optimistic that it is this generation that is going to make a difference in terms of how they talk about themselves, not only as young people and what they want for their future, but redefining what it means to be Muslim on the planet in 2013, and not allowing the voices of extremists to define who they are.
So they're the majority, these people you're talking about, they're the majority. The extremists are what, 5%, 10%? I mean, would you
The extremists are the minority. They have the loudest megaphone at the moment, but they are the minority.
By about how much, would you say?
It's impossible to make.
I mean,
a
you meet
decision.
these youth, I mean, none of them are probably extremists that you're meeting with, but I mean, would you say that, or maybe they are, I don't know. How small is this group? People, I think, put it out of perspective, especially when they watch the news. They think half are extremists, half are not extremists, just clear up some of those misperceptions, I guess.
So when you talk about that question, it's a really important question to ask, but it's a very unfair question to ask because there's no spectrum from which you can, there's no poll that's been done globally
Sure, I understand
that can say that. Just the same way where a lot of people who think about our engagement of any kind want to know how popular America is, and does that mean we're doing okay? It isn't about whether we're 89% popular or not. It's not about the number. It's about the movement that is taking place on the planet right now. And what I am saying is that while extremist ideology does exist in every part of our globe, in a wide range of ways, by the way, the vast majority of humanity are not part of that extremist ideology. What we have to do is to do more to lift up the voices that are not extremists and that can push back in a credible and organic way.
Now, just to wrap this up, how long do you think you will continue in the position, and do you anticipate that this position will be a permanent one once you leave? Like, will this just be an established position, or is it up to each president to decide whether
It's right now, the Office of the Special Representative was established, as I said, in June of 2009 to do the job that I've just defined.
Right.
And it is up to the Secretary of State to determine how they would like to engage and how they want to do it. The decision by the president to engage with Muslims in a more robust way is a perspective and a direction that he has taken both in his first term and now, and it will continue to be so. 1/4 of our planet is Muslim, And it is important for us to be engaged now and in the future because we cannot solve problems alone.
And so this is really a great strategy and a great program for bolstering sort of, I don't hesitate to use the word American popularity, but maybe respect for America or America's reputation abroad. Is it good for U.S. policy?
I think engagement of all kinds is really important. It's not about, quote, winning hearts and minds. It's a very problematic phrase. It's a phrase, as I said earlier, this is not a popularity contest. It isn't about that. It's about what we are doing to build new opportunities for dialogue and for opening up conversations where they didn't exist before. And one never knows where the building of trust and the building of relationships will lead. Oftentimes, you find people who for whatever reason had no opportunity to engage with U.S. government, and by allowing that opportunity to happen,
on the ground,
opening up new doors. Now, I want to say something about this moment in time with regard to this. And in 2013, when we have a planet that is connected technologically the way we are, and that we have a way of engaging at the State Department that is new in many ways on the technology side, where we're using new tools to allow people to engage with us, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or other components. It allows civil society to send messages to U.S. government in ways that they weren't able to before. So for many times, a young person will send me a direct message on Twitter or put something on Facebook to expose me to something that is going on, to let me know about an NGO or a movement that they're doing. I'll go to a country and I will tweet out that I'm going to that country, and does anybody have any ideas about what NGOs I should see or what youth movements I should take part in? This accessibility by civil society to government is new, and it's important, and in the 21st century it's necessary. So we're breaking down the old form of how you communicate, but rather allowing us to connect at a grassroots level allows us to hear things that we wouldn't normally hear before. So that's a part of the conversation, and how we think about who we're connecting to and how they're connecting to us.
What's next for you, both in the short term, as in where are you going next, and also how long will you be in this position?
So I'm heading out next month in October to Malaysia to be part of the President's Entrepreneurship Summit, and I'll do a trip around in the Southeast Asia region while I'm on the ground over there. And I'm looking forward to it. This summit is, as you know, a follow-on from the presidential summit that started in 2010 when the President talked about the importance of entrepreneurship and that one person can make a difference. So a focus on both social entrepreneurship as well as business entrepreneurship is allowing young people all over the world to think differently about their ideas and how you make a difference. So I'll be doing a lot of work around that, and I'll be talking about some of the entrepreneurs that I've met around the world who are engaged and very, very active and making a difference.
So you haven't run out of energy for this position?
Absolutely not. I feel very, very lucky to be part of this this team that we're working on with the President that cares so much about making sure that we're connecting at every level.
And you're helping us open up the Doris Duke Shangri-La exhibit tonight.
I'm very excited to be doing that as well. As I mentioned earlier today, I think it's a really important thing that Duke is doing by bringing forward the importance of art and culture to the dialogue piece here. It really is a wonderful exhibit, and I'm really looking forward to taking part.
And what's the importance of that, if you can repeat?
So for many people, when we think about cultures and histories, we can capture what that means through art and culture, obviously. But what I've seen in the modern era is that young Muslims are using art and culture in new and old ways to express themselves. They're creating a new narrative, whether it is a graffiti artist in Bahrain, or it is a hip-hop artist in another part of the world, or it is a imam in China that's using ancient calligraphy patterns in new modern ways to express a new way of looking at an old art. We are seeing a new definition of what it means to be Muslim, and they're using art and culture to be able to do that, whether it's music, whether it is more traditional art. It is important that we take a look at it, we understand the heritage, and what's important too is that at a moment in time when so many communities around the world who happen to be Muslim are finding that there is an erosion of understanding the history and the heritage that they have. to be able to celebrate it, to be able to say this is why it's important, this is where you came from, and these are the techniques and the different pieces of art that have been part of the value system and the community that you have here, is important, because the diversity of Muslims around the world is so critical for us to understand. Muslims are not a monolith, and we need to give dignity to the different cultures and the different religions and the different constructs in which Muslims live around the world. And art is one way of seeing that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.